So I was reminded by Misty before we came on the call today to turn off the notifications on my computer. So I'm going to pass along the reminder to all of you if you don't want to be interrupted. If you're able to turn off notifications and your ringer on your phone, and if that's a possibility for you, I invite you to do that now. And let's begin by just dropping right in. So, sitting, lying down, standing, however you're most comfortable and at ease today. Really listening to what your body is needing today and letting go of the shoulds. Just really being gentle and kind with your own body. And asking yourself whether eyes open or eyes closed feels more resonant for you today. How do you feel like you can feel safe and go inward at the same time? And for each of us, that's going to be a little different. So just tuning into what's true for you today. And if you're in a seated posture, then allowing the spine to elongate. Finding a comfortable posture. And also one that is awake and alert. So, in terms of meditating, we don't slouch, not because we're trying to be hard with ourselves, but because maintaining an upright posture when you're sitting, it's supportive of you, it's supportive of the practice. And if your body just feels way too tired right now, then lie down. Be gentle, be easy. And just begin with the simple intention of tuning into your breath. See if you can tune into the coolness of the in-breath coming through your nostrils, just that piece, just that simple moment in time. And tuning into where your energy is at. And what I mean by that is, are you feeling exhilarated or kind of a bubbly or nervous energy, or you feeling sad or confused or angry? Just tuning into whatever emotional tone is already here and noticing how the mind really, really wants to just be okay. It wants everything to be neutral. It wants there to either probably be happiness or joy or peace, but how there, for most of us at least, there is this not wanting to go towards the shadow, towards the uncomfortable stuff. And if you're feeling some uncomfortable stuff today, seeing if you can approach it slightly differently in a way that acknowledges that when we're feeling uncomfortable stuff, actually it's love that we're needing most. And most of us are still in training during this human life. And so, we haven't, we're bouncing around, and that's very, very human. And there's a lot of stuff going on in the world that's affecting all of us in various and different ways, but it's impacting us. And so rather than trying to be neutral or content or perfect or peaceful or have a good meditation today, see if you can just be exactly where you are. And not with the intention of wallowing or, drowning or anything like that. It's not like that. It's more like, and I realized I was doing this morning. I was driving from Milwaukee to Madison this morning and feeling really agitated and really uncomfortable and not really having a story attached to it. I had a business meeting that I was a little bit anxious about this morning, but, really no big story. And yet I really didn't want to feel what I was feeling. And I, was looking for the right song or the right audiobook or the thing that was going to distract me. And then it dawned on me that this is the practice, Sarah. And I was able to turn on a meditation by Sarah Blondin about being gentle, about loving kindness towards ourselves. And it just really spoke to exactly what I was needing at that moment. And so I invite you to do the same. And I invite us to do it together in a brave act of radical self-acceptance, in the words of Tara Brach. Radical self-acceptance. Radically turning towards whatever is here right now. Not with harshness, not with judgment, not with force, but simply with love, simply with kindness. Just as you would greet someone at your door who is having a hard day. Imagining, much like that poem that I love, The Guest House. Imagine that whatever is at the door today, grief, sorrow, anger, joy, whatever it may be, that you greet them and invite them into your home. That you sit down with whatever is here and you make it a cup of tea and you just listen with kindness. And sometimes we need extra comfort. And so if this is one of those days and it feels comforting, putting your hand on your heart or maybe a hand on your face, on your cheek. Sometimes these gestures, they speak to us on a different level, a level that even if our brain is very self-judgmental and self-critical, sometimes the act of doing something with our bodies that is loving, it can break through patterns of self-judgment and criticism. So finding a way to find comfort. And for some people today, that might mean listening to this curled up on the couch in a little ball. For some, it might mean you're listening to this while you're walking because your body needs to move. So, however you can find a small increment of ease, a way to be able to lean into whatever's here right now, that's what we do. We bring comfort, we bring nurturing into the space, into this big open space that is your consciousness. And so, along with inviting the sorrow or the grief or the anger or whatever it is into your home, you're inviting comfort and you're inviting nurturing. And maybe for you today, that means that you imagine a comforting or nurturing being sitting next to you, or with their arms around you, or holding you. Or maybe you have a pet that's sitting on your lap and you're petting that pet. Or maybe you imagine having a pet on your lap, all snuggled in. So invite in the comfort, invite in the nurturing, invite in those guests as well. And then invite in the breath. Because the breath is our link to that something that's bigger than us, that we all call different things. Some of us call it emptiness. Some of us call it love or God or the divine. Some of us don't name it as anything. But our breath is that connection. And it's given to us as a gift for us to rest in. And if the breath, after tuning into it for a bit, doesn't feel restful, you can begin to do 1 to 2 breathing. So in for about a count of 4 and out for about a count of 8. That will help the nervous system calm down. And if you're doing 1 to 2 breathing, you can breathe in through your nose if that's possible, and then you can breathe out through your nose with that constricted palate, that ujjayi breathing, if you know how to do that. Kind of sounds like you can hear yourself breathing. It's like a Darth Vader-y sound. Or you can purse your lips in kind of like an O shape, and that will slow down the out breath enough. Tuning into the rhythmic quality of breath, the way we breathe in, and there's a little pause, and then you breathe out, and then there's a natural pause, So, seeing if you can tune into not only the breath, but the space in between. That's often the point where the mind wanders. And again, there's nothing wrong with the mind wandering, there's no problem with that. So, we're just noticing, just like we were noticing the emotional tone of what is here today for you. When the thoughts wander, we just notice. Hmm. And then tuning back into the rhythmic quality of the breath. So again and again, coming back to that rhythmic quality of the breath and doing it in the kind way, doing it in the gentle way, the middle way. Noticing if there's a lot of judgment or I have to do this perfect or holding tightly. And if you feel that energy of holding too tightly, then see if you can just soften your body a little bit and soften the energy a little bit and just not try so hard. And then if you're feeling sleepy and kind of spacey, it's all about balancing, right? It's about balancing the energy. So if you're feeling a little sleepy and spacey, with gentle kindness, not with harshness, maybe try sitting up a little bit straighter. Maybe open your eyes to let the light in. Looking at something neutral. And then beginning again. Every time we can just begin again. So, in order to have the experience of that, your own experience, I'm just going to be quiet for the most part for the rest of the time and allow you to play with. And I would encourage you to really look at it as a game because most of us in this culture, especially right now, where there's a lot of serious things happening and we can get very tight and serious. And so I'd invite you with this meditation to be gentle, to be with yourself right where you're at, and to be playful with it. So if your mind wanders, just just noticing and being like, oh, there it goes again, having a lightheartedness about it, inviting that energy in. We can't force it, right? Can't force yourself to feel anything, but you can have an intention, even if it doesn't, exactly turn out that way or feel that way. So inviting in playfulness and whatever else is in your house today with you in your space. Resting in breath. remembering to lean into whatever is here right now. There's a strong pull to distract or to make stuff up when the mind gets still, gets bored. So there's a tendency and a wish to leave the body and the breath and the now. But the peace is right here. Peace is only right here. And even in the midst of great difficulty, if you can just be in this one breath, there can be peace in that. And that doesn't mean that there's not struggle and turmoil and pain and suffering there too. But there can just be this glimpse of, I don't have to fight my circumstances. I can lean into, I can stop resisting, I can surrender to the now, to what is already here. So see if you can practice doing that, noticing the pull of the future. Notice how the mind wants to create story and control and meaning. And that's understandable. Things are very uncertain right now, and we are human. And so we are going to bring kindness and allowing to all of it. You know, John Kabat-Zinn, a really great teacher, called it the full catastrophe. So it's not about getting away from that or getting some serene, perpetually calm demeanor about you. It's not about spiritually bypassing. It's about really tuning into what's real for you right now and facing it with courage and openness and love and honesty and authenticity with yourself. And comfort. Leaning into now. I'm going to read you something now, and I would invite you to stay centered in your breath while just kind of allowing the words to be in the background, to be there with the breath, and not having to memorize or learn anything, but just sort of allowing the words that are not mine to fall on your ears. So this is something that Michael Meade wrote recently. There's an old Irish myth about how when the center falls apart, when there is no big unifying story that can be told in public so that everyone remembers, yes, we are all in this together. When that happens, when the center cannot hold, the old story says, then it's time for each person to go to the margins and the edges of life. Because the center, when it's missing, does not completely disappear. Rather, the elements of the center are then found at the margins and edges of life. And so it becomes a time for each person to go to the edge that attracts them and at the same time causes them to be fearful. And the old story says that if each person goes in that direction that is both attractive and fearful to them, they will find that at the edge of their life a thread. And if each person would then pick up that thread and begin to pull it back towards the center, then the unifying center can be remade from the weaving together of many individual threads of life. In the greater myth that serves life, not death, no one has to be heroic and do it all or claim that they're the only one who can do it. Each person is just responsible to find their thread and find a way to weave it back into life. And the key to this narrative of the Great Way is that no one can be excluded for any reason, not because of their age or their origin or their race or their economic disposition, because each person has a life thread that is vitality, that has meaning, and that has creativity in it. And the point isn't to indulge in some kind of magical thinking that would say that no one is going to die on this troubled path that we all share at this point. And certainly the point cannot be that we're all going to go back to life and business as usual. The understanding of the bigger myth right now is the world as we knew it is already gone. The point now is to be inhabiting a bigger, unifying, living myth in which the words that we are all in this together have genuine, heartfelt meaning. We are in a time of radical change throughout the world, where life and death are struggling on a daily basis. And that requires each of us to change and come out of the crisis as greater souls, not smaller people. About each one of you, thank you for bringing your light today, and thank you for going inward and finding your own thread and weaving it back towards the center. So grateful to each one of you. And I'm just responding to Susan now. Can you share the reading you just did? It was very moving. Yeah, what I can do is I can send it to Misty. And if Misty is okay with sharing it with the listserv, I guess that's probably the best way to do it. I was wondering how I would do that if people asked, because it was shared with me on Facebook. And so it was a Facebook post that Michael Mead made. Um, and what I can do is I can share it on my public feed. So that would be another way you could find it.
Yeah, if Sarah, if you give that to me, I can share that.
Okay, yeah, I'll send it to you on Facebook, Misty, because I don't on Messenger, because I don't really know of any other way,
Nope, that's fine.
given my lack of technological savviness. And to each one of you, you're so very welcome. I really can't emphasize um, how beneficial this has been um, for me too, to sit with you each week. It's really important for me. So thank you. Vicki, I'm not on Facebook. How do I also see this? So yeah, I'm gonna send it, Vicki. I'll send it to Misty. And if you're on to be on here today, you must be on the listserv, and then Misty can send it out to everybody. Even if we have to like copy and paste it, we could always do that. Just realized. Um, we could copy and paste it into an email. So So Jan is asking, many distractions today, how to tune out noises around us. I'm going to make the assumption, Jan, that you mean literal noises, like sounds around you, rather than all the noise we have inside of us all the time. Um, so just like the noises outside of us, we have a lot of noise inside of us. And the more we fight with outside noise, the more it bothers us. So the more we try to have, just like I was kind of describing at the beginning of the meditation, the more you try to have a perfect meditation where you're some sort of, spiritual person that is sitting and perfectly calm, like that's not real. And life isn't quiet in many places, I mean, some people live out in the woods and it's very quiet. But, right now I'm in the place that I'm living, which is near a train track, and, there's cars going by and it's not quiet. And so it's about recognizing that you may be one of those people that sound sensitive. I'm very sound sensitive too. And sometimes I will sit with noise blocking headphones on if you have those. Or sometimes I will sit with a chant in the background. So there's no right or wrong way to handle outside sound that's bothering you, but I have also practiced with it in a way where just like you can lean into whatever your emotions are in the moment, you can lean into sound too. And um, I've some of you have heard me tell this story at retreats that I've done, but one of my very early meditation retreats, one of the first several day silent meditation retreats that I went on many years ago, um, I had this idea that I was going to be, like all zen and enlightened, and I mean, not enlightened, but, like very still, and it was going to be calm and peaceful. And I definitely had that like idea going into it. And of course, it's hilarious because that's not how it is. And So, I sat down and there was an older gentleman sitting next to me, and we were in a tight, a pretty smallish room with about 50 to 60 people sitting about, we would sit, walk. And so we'd sit for 45 minutes, we'd walk for 20, and we would do that all day long, except for meals and then a talk usually in the evening. And so there was a lot of sitting. It was in a Buddhist tradition. And this older man next to me, he would fall asleep it felt like every few minutes, and his head would lean back and he would, he'd just start snoring like right away. And, I'm here like, I'm going to have this experience. I'm going to have this relaxing, experience. And it was not relaxing. It was, my mind just went wild with, dislike and even like hatred at points for this guy who was this sweet old man, who, I mean, it was ridiculous what my mind was doing. It was not peaceful. It was not calm. I got to look at hatred and anger, and that was my lesson. And, thankfully I caught it after about 24 to 48 hours of sitting in it, and realized what I was doing and realized what I was letting happen, that I was letting my mind literally create a living hell for myself. And so I decided that this man was my teacher, that he was my teacher on this retreat, because I was going to learn something from this. And so when we would pass in the hallway, whereas previously I was like feeling all this anger and rage and like, oh, why can't you just take a nap and stay in your room and not come meditate, Um, why are you here? You just keep sleeping. And I just had all this anger. Instead of doing that, when I would pass him, in my mind, I would just like bow to him with like deep respect. And at first it was really fakey, and like, I wasn't doing it in an action, I was doing it in my mind. And at first it was very contrived, and I was just doing it because I was really tired of suffering. And I needed to figure out a different way to be with this man snoring for 5 days. And then it was very interesting. It really truly did transform, to the point where I would start, and I would decide that his snoring was what I was supposed to be listening to, and I would just listen to it. And that would be the focus of my awareness, was his snoring. And it was very irregular, so it wasn't like the breath where you can kind of settle into a rhythm. And it was interesting, as soon as I started really just almost bringing this energy, I can't even say of love, because I definitely was way too pissed off to be feeling that, but this energy of like respect and like, okay, I've got something to learn from you, I'm going to tune into you rather than deciding you are the problem, you know so anyway, Jan, that's a very long-winded way to answer your question about noises, but it's a very good question. And it's going to be different on any given day, but I would invite you to see about tuning into the noise, because in my experience, if I genuinely tune into it, all of a sudden it's not there anymore. And that's what happened with this man snoring. Is I tuned right into it. It took a while, but then, and we're sitting for several hours a day, so it's different than just sitting here and there, because your mind does get stiller. But eventually what happened is I went into a very deep state of, you know, uh, of peace, really. But it came from going into what was already there. And that's why I'm trying to encourage you all to go into what's already here. It's not about like getting rid of what's here so that you can find the peace. It's about going into literally what is in your face, what's in your awareness, and but doing it in a way that's skillful, and that's where the nuance comes in. So anyway, Jeannie, you're welcome for sharing the disconnectedness. Yeah, yeah. I mean, a lot of times the way I guide meditation, it comes directly out of my own personal experience because I don't really know any other way to teach, because it's just what's real and true for me right now. So I'm glad that you were able to connect with that because that really is what happened, and it felt really good to stop trying to get away from that feeling, that unease, that icky, uncomfortable feeling that I was feeling. And once I turned towards it, I realized I'm just feeling some anxiety, and I didn't even have a name for it really. It was more so like, and the Sarah Blondin meditation just reminded me that it's when we're in those times, we need love more than anything. We don't need to block it or turn away from it because that's an act of kind of abandoning ourselves, when we're in the midst of difficulty. We don't need to be abandoned in the midst of difficulty. We need comfort, we need nurturing, we need to put our hands on our heart, we need to listen to something soothing. That's kind of what I did in order to like remember, the skillful way, the middle way of handling things. But I was very much lost in my own story, my own feeling of wanting to not feel what I was, that uncomfortable feeling. Um, Pam says, regarding the peace that is always available beyond the suffering, I find that I make finding that peace into a goal and am not as open to all that is present in the moment. Do you have any advice? Yeah, welcome to the human experience, Pam. That's the tricky part, right? That's that's non-dualism, is recognizing that when we're striving, when we're trying to be something, we're missing out, And so it's like, well, how do you, it's the paradox, right? It's the absolute paradox. And so you just keep trying to let go. Really, it's a letting go. And that's what it's been for me, is this like process of being less and less of some role, like less and less of like, who's the spiritual aspirant, who's the meditation teacher, who's the this, trying to release those ego roles that I'm drawn to. We all have them. And ego is not bad. Just recognizing that we have to have an ego to exist, in this world. But so, just recognizing, that is the main obstacle for the spiritual seeker, is being able to drop the seeking. And I had a good conversation with my friend this morning that reminded me of that, is that really it's all right here in this moment. And that's really true. And the whole universe is inside of you. And um, you know, this can all get very philosophical and esoteric and confusing. In fact, I'm feeling a little confused myself right at the moment, but I think it's really about trying to let go, letting go of having a goal, letting go of peace being the goal, while recognizing that, that's not entirely really possible. Of course, you want to feel peaceful, but it's in the being with things that are already here, that are right here. That's how you find the peace. And it just happens that way. And the more we're striving, the harder it is to get there, because there's nowhere to go. There's truly nowhere to go. Deborah, I am new to meditation. As we go through each session, I'm finding my breath is very shallow. Does that have an effect on meditation? I noticed I try to concentrate on deeper breathing, which causes a distraction to me. Yeah, so thank you, Deborah, for asking about this. And oftentimes I will speak to this. There are some other recorded meditations that I often will talk about the quality of your breath. And uh, it's really lovely to start learning how to do diaphragmatic breathing, which means you're using your diaphragm, you're using your breathing muscle. And when you breathe in, your belly, I'm just going to move the camera so you can see my belly. So when I breathe in, you can see that my belly pushes out. And when I breathe out, my belly button retracts towards my spine. Now, if I'm breathing shallowly, if I'm breathing like up in my up in my upper lungs, it looks like this. So you can see I can breathe really deeply, but it's still up here. And the nervous system is calmed, and I can get into the whole scientific explanation of why, but we don't have time for that today. But practicing that kind of breathing, and you don't even need to breathe that way throughout the entire meditation, but there's just something about starting that way, and eventually the body does adapt and breathe more in that way more of the time. I think I'd have to really pay attention to my breathing throughout the day, which, I'm not sure whether I'm doing diaphragmatic breathing throughout the day. I don't think I am, but I'm also not breathing up here. So anyway, to answer you directly, start to work with diaphragmatic breathing, and you might be able to feel it better when you're laying down. A lot of people notice too when they first start to do this that their stomach is sucking in when they're breathing in. So it would look more like this. See, my stomach just sucked in and my shoulders raised. So that means I'm not belly breathing. I'm not using my diaphragm. So it's a different, many people are breathing opposite to that. And that is agitating to the nervous system. It's activating, because when we're anxious, we breathe up here, we breathe shallowly. And so part of shifting your own nervous system is supporting yourself by breathing in a way that is calming to your nervous system. And most people just haven't learned that yet. So I'm really glad you asked the question. It's an excellent question. Great story and lesson. Thank you for sharing. You're welcome. Fascinating. Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful story. Thank you. Much needed. Thank you. You're so welcome. Thank you. I think your other answers also answered my question to lean into what's here right now. Yes. Kira says, thank you for sharing the story about the person snoring at the retreat you were attending. Without going into detail, I will say that your anecdote is helpful to me in terms of how much I've been responding to someone who is interacting with me and others in unexplained negative ways. Yeah, it applies to everything, right, Kira? I mean, you know, we're all annoyed by various things and various people. And usually it's because there's something to learn. Usually it's because there's something inside of us that we can learn from, and we can look at, and we can bow to that person as our teacher, because we're getting triggered for a reason. You know, if there was no I, no self, no ego, there would be no triggering. There would be no, and I'm not saying that that you need to push yourself towards that. We're very human, all of us. So it's not about judging that, about our humanness. It's about recognizing it, but saying, okay, I can do this differently. I can look at the people and things that annoy me as not as obstacles to push out of my way, but more so, can I lean into this? Can I tune into this? Can I love this? Um, and can I learn from that? Um, any thoughts on how to face one's anxiety when it feels a little scary to do so? Yeah, Kathy, I really can relate to that. I was a child born with an anxiety disorder, so that was undiagnosed through no fault of my parents. They just didn't know what it was. And so I have dealt with anxiety on and off throughout my entire life. And came to meditation really because of anxiety. I was waking up at 3 in the morning with panic attacks during medical school and nearly dropped out of medical school because of it. Um, so, yeah, I know all about anxiety and how it is scary. And what I would suggest is finding a really good therapist um, to work with you, and ideally somebody who knows about working with the body with anxiety, because I think for a long time I worked with people in their minds with anxiety, and there's a way to work in the body and to help the nervous system calm itself. And so if you haven't heard me teach the 4-7-8 breathing, Andrew Weil's 4-7-8 breathing, it's not really his breathing, but he has sort of made it into a form that's accessible to Westerners. And he's got a several nice YouTube videos. So if you just Google or if you go on YouTube and you search Dr. Weil, Weil 4-7-8. So Weil 4-7-8. It'll pop up with videos. And honestly, that is one of the best tools that I know about beginning to work with anxiety in an intentional way. There are many people who, in order to do meaningful work in therapy or in meditation, they need medications. So I am an integrative psychiatrist. I believe in using medicines as a last resort. And there are lots of supplements and herbal things that can be done for anxiety. But sometimes people need meds. And I, at various points in my life, have needed meds. And there's nothing to be ashamed about that. They're tools, just like meditation is a tool. Um, so it's also about recognizing that the anxiety isn't going to hurt you. So, anxiety or fear, it's a set of body sensations that we've been trained to be afraid of, because most of us grew up with parents who didn't, they weren't bad, they just didn't know how to work with emotions because it's tricky. And most people haven't learned that by the time they have children, in their 20s. Most of us are a hot mess. I was certainly a hot mess when I had my daughter at 29. And so we didn't get trained. So what I'm saying is the anxiety is not it feels scary because of the old story that it's overwhelming and you can't handle it. But what it is it's body sensations. Anxiety and fear, fear can feel like that tightness in your throat, or some people have anxiety as a stomach feeling. So when you can recognize the body feelings of a certain emotion, it gives you a little space from the emotion, because you recognize that whatever you're anxious about is in the future and the past, without unless you're in the midst of like a civil war, or you're like in the midst of trauma in that moment, then the fear is now, right? But most of us are not in that situation most of the time. Some people are. Some people right now are truly in terrifying circumstances, and that is a different question. But most of us physically are actually safe right now. And so it's about comforting your own mind by saying, in this moment, really, am I in danger? No, I'm not in physical danger right now. And so it's not about minimizing the fear because the fear feels very real, but it's about reassuring yourself that you're not in physical danger and you can slow down and observe that feeling. But sometimes it's just too big. Sometimes the bodily feelings of anxiety are too old and embedded, or there's trauma associated. And then we need guides and we need helpers and we need supports. And I've needed all those things throughout my life to work with anxiety. I still have those things in place in terms of close friends that I speak with about things I'm fearful about. I have my therapist that I adore. So, draw not just on meditation to work with anxiety, but draw on all your resources, and think outside the box right now because we all need to think outside the box about how to cope, and that is very understandable. um, the thing, Kathy, that calms me so much, one of the things is I have found that Sarah Blondin, her meditations on Insight Timer, it's this app that's free. And as I've said, I am not technologically savvy, and I've been able to figure this app out. Obviously, if you don't have a computer or a smartphone, that's a whole different story. But if you can get Insight Timer, her name is Sarah Blondin, Blondin, and her meditations are more like poems, and she talks almost the entire time, which, if you're having a really anxious moment, is really nice. And she has this very soothing voice that kind of lulls you. So, and what I do when I'm really anxious, I'll listen to her and I'll listen to each word, So I really try to focus on what she's saying. And so maybe that will help too. As you find a teacher that you really like their voice, you like their style, and then in a really anxious moment, you listen to a guided meditation instead of sitting in silence. Um, you've listened to Sarah Blondin. Okay. Um, so anyway, all that is to say, I should probably go now since my class started 15 minutes ago, but it's been lovely being with all of you.